Nora Speaks is a weekly podcast that tugs at the soul and consciousness of the Black community. With show topics such as youth empowerment, education, women's impact, and civic engagement, Nora Speaks challenges the listener to not only join the movement, but be the movement. On the show, you'll learn from insightful guests who have demonstrated capacity in these fields and more, and I'm your host, Nora Muhammad. Welcome to the show. Welcome back to another episode of the Nora Speaks podcast, and I am so happy to be here with you, and I'm glad that you're here with me for episode 258, titled "The Work Continues." I am so happy to be back again for another episode of the podcast, and I'm just very grateful that you have joined me in this episode. And this is the second episode of 2026, and it's something how time just flies. And as I mentioned in the previous episode, I would be sharing some insights and thoughts about, more takeaways from 2025 and some of the things that I endeavored in and some of the losses and lessons learned from losses that I had. And this episode, again, is titled "The Work Continues." And I want to share some thoughts about having run for political office and what that experience was like, some lessons, some takeaways. And, I also want to share information for those of you who listen who may be considering participating in the political process in your town or your state, and how one might prepare for that. And specifically, some of the considerations that, I examined as I was asked to run for office in my local town. And I want to sum it up in kind of these, few questions, these 5 questions: why, who, how, what, and when. And I will tell you, just to start, running for office in my town was just such a privilege. And I was very grateful to be considered, by our local leader, specifically our mayor here where I live, to run for office. As I'll share as we move through this episode, it was something that I take very seriously, and I respect our local leadership tremendously. And so to have been considered and thought to be someone who would be asked to serve, it really did mean a lot. And so these are some of the questions or some of the considerations that I had as I prepared to run for office. So why, who, how, what, and when. And so, why? Why you, why me? In thinking about who you are, and what you stand for, what you believe, what you want for your life, what you want for your community. Consider all of that, and as you consider why me, why you. And for me, I'm someone who have been serving my local community in some form or fashion since college. And I saw it as a way to broaden that service, as the way in which I've been able to impact my community has grown over the years. But I just thought that elected office would give me an opportunity to broaden this service, specifically the office that I was running for as council person. Specifically council person at large, which means you're really serving the entire city, not just, specific territory or geographical region. And so certainly having the opportunity to serve on council as someone at large would have helped me have a greater impact amongst a greater number of people, especially as it relates to ensuring their needs are met and quality of life concerns could be addressed. So when you're running or being asked to run or considering to run, really take a look at yourself and consider why you. Do you have the qualifications? Like, for example, uh, do you live in the area in which you're running for? And just some of those things, and taking a look at the qualifications of the candidate, in what those technical aspects are, but also some of the interpersonal ones, in what objective you would like to achieve, as it relates to who you are, what you're currently doing, and does it fit in with your career? Does it fit in with your interests? Just because you're asked to run, you might be someone that's serving, and you might want to stay outside of the political lane and just keep serving in a nonprofit capacity, or as a individual person, as a block captain, as a little league coach, or whatever it is that you do. You might just want to be on the sidelines politically. So you just have to make sure that it's right for you. And then after the why, it's the who. Who will be the people to support you on and off the campaign trail? Who would be potentially your opposition? You may not know that actually until, because there's deadlines. So you might not know until all of the petitions are filed who's running for the same office. So, who might your opposition be? Who are the constituents that you're running to serve? And whose votes that you're seeking, and who also might be those influential people who could make an impact either for or against you as you're seeking office. And so as I was considering the who, my personal team, the people who back me personally, I felt confident that running and having their support, regardless of the outcome, I would be okay. Running for political office, specifically where I live, it can be quite an ugly terrain to navigate. And so making sure that you have a team of people who could provide the appropriate moral support, technical support and all of that, but the appropriate moral and spiritual support is just really, really important. And so the close team, the personal team that I had around me are not people who engage in nonsense and negativity. That just doesn't align with who I am as a person. And so we just did not focus on the ugliness that comes with running for office locally. And so I was very much, because of these folks, insulated from the ugliness. And, it was interesting because people, here and there during the campaign would say, how you doing? Are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good, and soon I realized that, those folks who were in opposition to me were, sharing some, negativity on their campaign. And so, people who didn't know me well thought that, perhaps I was impacted by it or bothered by it. And perhaps were trying to give me words of encouragement. But quite frankly, I was very far from it. It was that occasional person who, I don't know, perhaps they thought they were doing good, or maybe they were just being messy, would say, did you hear such and such? Did you hear such and such? And so that, I would get those a few inclinations from people who didn't know my personal posture as it relates to, oppositional campaigns. And they would try to share things with me. And so that's how I would become aware of some things. But, to a great extent, like I said, I was insulated, and it's because of those people that I, surround myself with. And so I was very appreciative of that. And I knew that I could and would be insulated from that negativity. And so I had a wonderful personal team, my family, of course, and a good group, a beautiful group of friends who were there. But then one of the things that happened during the campaign that I just was very, very grateful for was a community of people who came together and supported me politically. And, um, you get support and help from, sometimes the most unexpected people, places, or sometimes in really unexpected ways. And I was blessed to have a team that came and encircled me. Very um, uh, uh, People of very high moral character, people of integrity who came with their team and really encircled me. And I was just really grateful for that. And I got to meet people and work with people in very different ways than I was used to. And, bonds were formed. And, just beyond running for political office, I now have relationships with people who I didn't know, very well before the campaign, but people that I have very wonderful, beautiful, and solid bonds with subsequent to the campaign, and that were built during the campaign. And I'm just forever grateful. And I just want to give a public mention to a couple of those people, specifically the school board president here where I live and serve, that is school board president Nnamdi Nelson, and his tremendous leadership, a person of just very high character and work ethic, and the bond that he helped facilitate between me and Naima Gillespie, a young lady who serves my community and has been serving for many, many, many years in various ways and making meaningful and positive impacts in the community. And, she and I have developed a wonderful relationship. And it is just, before in the last episode, I was really trying not to use hyperbole, but, I really felt like we have developed a divine bond. We share the same values, the same goals and intentions in serving our community. And we, we're people who didn't know each other very well prior to, but, the love that we share now. And I believe that the relationships that developed during the campaign are relationships that will really serve our community in a very special way. And so I just thank them. And so when you're running for office, the who is so important. Those people who will be supporting you personally, that team that's really behind the scenes, those people who will pick up slack because there's areas in your life when you're running for office that you just can't focus on because, as I stated previously, running for office is like a full court press for a long period of time. And you have to be uber focused on it. And so there are areas that you just can't cover. You can't do everything. You'll exhaust yourself. You'll burn yourself out. So I had great people who could pick up the slack in specific areas. Responsibilities were delegated. I had people who could, engage in roles that they were unfamiliar with, all across the board. And then, the team that came in the political way, led by, school board president Nnamdi Nelson and, the exceptional Naima Gillespie, I just can't thank God for. And one thing that I'm just so grateful for is that it was so much larger than just a political campaign or a political opportunity. It's something that is great for this city that I love and that I serve. And so you just want to make sure that you're going to have people around you that are going to support you, who I think this is something that's important to add, who are, as you're running and you're not running because you're looking for something selfish or, some kind of personal gain. You're really looking to serve. It's so wonderful to have people that have that same attitude and disposition, because then that when they're around you, helping you, supporting you, then you don't have to be concerned with they themselves aren't supporting you fully, or that they are working behind the scenes for their own personal interest. It's something I've recalled, and I don't mean to go too much on a tangent, but when I've seen entertainers who have talked about people coming behind them after they've brought them around, and now they're, making side deals and trying to seek opportunities. And you thought, oh, I thought you were there to support, what this movement had going on, or you're in it trying to, pick a piece off for yourself. And so when you can just run with people to support you, uh, um, you don't have to be distracted by people close to you trying to undermine you, trying to undercut you. And there's such a freedom in that. And that's what this team gave me. They gave me a freedom. And I'm not sure that they realize, even now, after I've thanked them and talked about it, I'm not sure that they even realize the impact that they had on me in the ability to be free. And when you're free, you can be vulnerable. And it was just a really beautiful thing, because running for office and talking, about who you are, and going to the people and petitioning them for a vote, you do put yourself in a very vulnerable position. And so I've always respected people who did that, regardless of what I thought about them personally or their platforms. I always respected a person who was running and going in front of people, and because you open yourself up to a lot when you're running for office, and a lot of inspection, a lot of interrogation, and you make yourself vulnerable. And so kudos to people who do it and who are doing it with integrity. And so you always want to think about the who, and that is your team that's around you. And so the other consideration, number 3, after the why and the who, is the how. How are you going to run? Not just the part about establishing a campaign, your campaign slogan, your campaign brand coloring, your messaging, how you're going to communicate to the people. Are you going to run a negative campaign, a positive campaign? So for me, because I assisted with other candidates who've run, as I mentioned, I am the co-chair of our local party. That was already familiar to me, but the how was I going to introduce myself to people? For me, I've always introduced others. I've always celebrated others. I've always pushed others. But now here I am, my turn to push myself, something that I was very familiar with. And so I will say it was unique, unusual, sometimes uncomfortable talking about myself. But what it made it easier was really thinking about my origin story, who I am and how I got to find myself being asked to run for office. And fortunately, that landed me in talking about my grandmother, as I was able to talk about watching her in serving people as she served as labor union shop steward, labor union president for so many years, decades, and her advocacy for families, for workers and their families, whether that's healthcare, workplace conditions, and watching her do that for years, that was something that I got to watch very, very closely. And I got to see what service was at a very, very early age. And she was someone that served with integrity for people. It was never about self. It was never about ego. So, she really was responsible for a great deal of my foundation and who I am as a person. So using that as a springboard in talking about my origin story and introducing myself to the community in a different kind of way, that was certainly a privilege. But also when I talk about the how in running, it's how do you message? For me, as I've said before, I believe in running for service, not running in opposition. So how a person runs, I think it matters, because you go in front of the voters, you go in front of the people that you're looking to serve. And how are you coming to them? Are you coming to them because you're an oppositional candidate? Are you coming to them because you're interested in them and their needs? Because as you're campaigning and talking with people and meeting different groups of people, you get to see more clearly what it is that they need. And it becomes less about you, yourself, your ego, maybe your personal agenda, and let the people help craft the agenda that you're running for, because they're the ones who are letting you know what it is that they need. So when you're running, think about how you're going to run. Are you an oppositional candidate? Are you a candidate that's running because you recognize a need? You might find that there's something that's lacking, and you might have the skills, the tools, the resources to fulfill, meet need, and meet the needs of people. And so think about that. Think about the how you will run your campaign, and of course, the voters will make their choice. Um, and then what, right? What are you running for? What is the office? What are the requirements of the office? What are the demands of the office that you're running for? Um, and what are you running for? Are you running for a platform for your own personal gain, or are you running personally to give to people? So understand the office that you're running for. Understand the demands of the job that you're asking the voters to put you in, and understand that you're running to fulfill the needs of people, right? So you want to know what you're running for. You want to know if it's within your scope to do. You want to know if it aligns with your values. So that matters too. What are you running for? It's different running for school board, a council, Senate, PTA president, right? So what is it that is going to demand you to give? So that's very, very important, wanting to know what it is that you're running for. And then another question that I had to consider, and that you should consider when the time comes, and that is when, meaning timing. Timing. Is it the right time for you personally? Is it the right time for your family? Is it the right time for your community? So you have to calculate the time, because you might be interested in office, but maybe there are circumstances within your family dynamics that just might not be aligning at that moment. So you want to make sure that the timing matters, right? Are your children very, very young? Do you need to, put in a lot of time there? Are there concerns with maybe family members that you're caring for? Are you working several jobs, and will you have the time to give and that at that time, will you have time to put into the campaign? Because again, as I said, running is like a full court press, and it's almost 24/7. So do you have the time? So understanding the timing, that really matters. And so these are just a few considerations. There's so many more, but I wanted to share some that I had to confront and decide, was it right for me at this time? How was I going to run? How was I going to brand myself? What did I want to represent to the people? And who was I going to have around me? And why me? So it's a lot, because whether you are successful in your campaign or whether you're not, it requires so much dedication and commitment of you. You just want to be certain that you can give it everything that it requires. You don't want to do something halfway. I didn't want to do anything halfway. As I said previously, it was a difficult time for my family. We were confronted with some significant challenges. I was confronted with some significant challenges. One of the things that was interesting, and a person would need to prepare themselves for, are the negative attacks. And as I said, anytime there's political season, where I live, it always gets ugly and always gets negative. So you want to make sure you're very clear about who you are. You want to make sure that you do an analysis of what vulnerabilities you might have in your life, in your personal life. Whether you're have to reveal financial expenditures, tax returns, all of that. You just want to make sure that you're very clear on how bad it can get, and prepare yourself to have people say things that are untrue about you. I will say it's something a friend of mine said, something to get to, a mature age and be confronted with middle school pettiness. You're a professional person, you're living your life, and then are confronted with, hearsay, gossip, slander, and frankly, just lies. And I think it's unfortunate because I believe that the people who you're running to serve deserve so much more than mistruths, misdirections, slander, and petty campaigns. Now, I also know and have seen enough to know that this comes with the territory when you're running politically. But it's just disappointing, and I'll say frankly, it's disappointing that other Black women would engage in this type of behavior. But it happens. It happens, and as I said, I was not successful in my campaign, but I felt very good about how I did it, and to be able to go back in front of the same people whose votes I asked for, whether they voted for me or not, for them not to have to question, why did you lie to me? Why did you say that about that person? Why did you say that? I don't have anything to apologize for. I said what I meant. I meant what I said. And there's not any facts that I have to go back and correct. And I didn't misrepresent anybody. I didn't misrepresent myself or my family. And I can feel very proud of how I ran. And that says a lot. I don't have to look my children in the face, or they have to look my grandmother in the face and she say, why did you say that? This is not how I raised you. And that feels good. It feels good to be truthful, and to be transparent, and it's an interesting process. So for anyone who's considering running for office, understand that it's going to require a lot. Understand that there will be some unfortunate experiences that you may go through, that your family may go through. But remember who you are. Remember and be aware of who you're running to serve and what their needs are, and let their needs set your agenda. So thank you again for joining me for episode 258 of the podcast. It's always a privilege to have your attention. I know that there's so much calling for it, and there's so many things that are distracting us. And when you come to Nora Speaks, you're coming for intelligent conversation. You're coming for insights that are not necessarily in the mainstream. And you get a unique perspective here. And I'm very proud of what we do with the podcast. So thank you for listening to this episode. And until next time, stay in peace.
We were brought here as a piece of property. And to keep that piece of property, it is to not allow the property to know the value of the property. And what I mean by that, if you had known the history of yourself, you would not have been made a slave. And you won't be a slave now if you have a knowledge of yourself. It's hard to enslave a person that have equal knowledge with you. You just can't do it. And so this knowledge of yourself is the thing that will free you from what you have been suffering from.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Nora Speaks. Look out for a new episode coming at you fresh next week. And if you want to learn more about me and the work that I do, you can visit my website, noraspeaks.com. Or if you have a listener question, you can email me at nora@noraspeaks.com. Follow Nora Speaks on X, Instagram, and Facebook at Nora Speaks, or you can subscribe to the Nora Speaks YouTube channel. I will be sure to include links in the show notes. If Nora Speaks has value to you, please subscribe, rate, and review, and share with family and friends. And be sure to check out previous episodes. And remember, don't just join the movement, be the movement. Stay in peace.